Well, this one should be interesting. What is going on? It's your oh so beloved Mace Valor. Oh so beloved and glorious Mace Valor, that is. Dear Donald Trump. You know, this is an open letter, I should say, so it's not really specified to him. I'm a fan of Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I support my president, but I will not shy from the fact that sometimes he just says some weird shit. And I'm not going to go into all the nuances of everything that he discusses, because this would be a rather long video, because I don't agree with everything. I agree some more with the notion of some of the things he says. But something came up recently with this whole shooting, this school shooting. And one of his responses was about video games. That violent video games were a problem for young people. It's frustrating because it's almost like every agency wants to ignore the ESRB. The ESRB is constantly fucking ignored everywhere. Prime example, we have games that are rated M for mature, right? For a fucking reason. Because the parent has to be okay with their child playing an M-rated game. Now, more often than not, parents just don't give a shit. My kid wants to play the game, we'll let him play the fucking game. I'll worry about anything else later. You see, my parents didn't want me to play Grand Theft Auto growing up, but they had no problem with me playing other M-rated games like Aliens. Like, I played Aliens back on the PS1, no problem. I played Tomb Raider, no problem. I think that was maybe T-rated? T or M? I don't remember. But there were violent games that I played when I was a kid, but it's this whole directional thing. You see, my parents didn't want me playing Grand Theft Auto because there was drugs, alcohol, and a lot of the subject matter they felt wasn't good for a child. I didn't actually even own a Grand Theft Auto game until I was 16, because that was the age that they felt that I would be able to be desensitized. I wouldn't be desensitized by this medium. They felt that, hey, he can play Grand Theft Auto now because he's kind of grown up to a point to where he understands that this is just a game, that this is just imaginary. So yeah, I was 12 years old, and of course, I would go to my friend's house and play it, and wouldn't tell my parents. Obviously, it's just what kids fucking do. If they want to play the game, they're gonna find a way to play it. But my parents were very steadfast in the fact that we don't feel like you're ready for this. Hell, I wasn't allowed to own a BB gun. All my fucking friends had a fucking BB gun. I didn't. And I asked for one for years, never got one. Side note, my fucking sister got a fucking an airsoft pistol when she was fucking 10 or 11, something like that. You fucking kidding me, mom and dad? Anyway, more so to the point. The fact that I understand that this is a tragedy and everyone wants to shift blame somewhere, someone ultimately has to be held responsible for not just for the event, but for this man's mental state, for him to be able to go and for him to convince himself in his mind to go and do this stuff. And it's a fucking tragedy, and it's horrible. It really is fucking horrible. And to save face, people want to throw blame. If the blame could be put in any direction, they want to throw it somewhere else. Republicans don't want crazy gun control, so let's deviate. Oh, this isn't the problem of guns, this is the problem of violent video games. Well, let's take a look at movies, okay? There are a ton of movies out there that are just as violent as video games. The difference is control. When you're watching a movie, you're seeing something take place, whereas in a video game, you're essentially the master that's in control of that activity. So it kind of makes sense why people want to make that argument. But at the end of the day, though, it comes down to the ESRB. Now, if parents want their children to play fucking Doom when they're 9 years old, that's up to the parents' discretion. And so whose fault is it ultimately if the kid is going to be influenced by this medium? Well, I don't want to sit here and say blame the fucking parents, because then the parents are going to be like, well, it's not my fucking fault. No one wants to be held accountable. No one wants to hold on to the blame. And they all ignore mental health. I've even been told I have a history of mental things without going into it. And I've been directly told before by people, friends of mine, that, oh, you don't have mental health. There's no such thing as mental health. That's not a thing. You know, taking medicine to fix your fucked up mind, that's not a thing. I mean, it is. And it's something that this world just ignores completely, and it's very unfortunate. And instead of trying to address what the real issues are, we want to shift blame. Someone has to be held responsible. Some idea has to be held responsible, and then we're going to tackle that while ignoring the root cause of things. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the touchy nuances of this event because that goes all over the place. I'm specifying this on the whole video game thing. It's not the fault of video games. Yeah, are video games violent? Yeah, video games are violent. Can music be violent? Yes, music can be violent. Can film be violent? Yes, this whole entertainment medium can have a level of violence in it. It can have a level of it can have levels of things that most of society isn't okay with. But that's an art form. Video games have always been an art form. Whether anyone wants to look at it or not in that perspective, the reality is you take people that have this creative vision and then they make a game, an interactive medium for people to explore worlds or to test their level of skill in certain events. Video games are an art form. Now, can they be perceived one way or another? Abso-fucking-lutely they can. They can. I will not deny that. But when I hear the blame being put on video games, that it's the fault of the game, the fact that it exists in this state. Trump, man. No. I won't deny that video games are violent, but it is the fault of video games. As much as you don't want to blame the gun for someone wielding it, it's not the fault of a video game just for existing in its current state. Everything in this world can be subjective. People with different perspectives can take things and kind of twist them however they want. It just boils down to perspective, and the perspective of a video game, the perspective of holding a firearm, the perspective of what someone takes away from watching a violent film or listening to violent music, it changes. Everyone has a different perspective. And just because someone that's mentally ill has a certain perspective, we shouldn't ignore the mental illness just because of what he ended up doing. Yeah, this person that was mentally ill had done a horrible, horrible act, done a horrible fucking deed. And that is horrible. But let's ignore the mental illness and try to blame what the problem is. Let's blame guns. Let's blame video games. Let's blame people that could have stopped this. You want to do this whole back in time stuff? Fine. We can do this whole back in time shit. That is this whole back in time. Oh, people could have stopped this, so it's their fault that they didn't. Yeah, I mean, if this guy, if people were suspected of that he might be capable of doing something, but he hadn't committed any crime, what the fuck are you gonna do? You can't stop someone from doing something if it's not written yet. Video games aren't the problem. Society's outlook on mental health is the fucking issue. And yeah, I heard that this guy was fucking bullied in school. Why isn't that like a cause for why this happened? Why aren't we focusing on that? Why are we ignoring that? What led this man to have the mental state that he had? Not to give him a free pass, not to say that what he did was okay. It's horrible. But we can learn. We can learn from this. If this guy was picked on in school and it got so bad that it drove him to this direction, why weren't things addressed when he was getting picked on? Why wasn't he given some form of help? Why weren't the people that were picking on him needlessly held responsible? I'm not saying that to ignore the issue of the guns. I'm not saying to ignore the issue of the event. Definitely take care of that, but we have to learn from events if we're going to make sure that this never happens again. The more that we sit here and choose to ignore the core values of what happened. And the core values are that mental illness is a fucking issue. That's what we need to really take a look at. Of course, yeah, there's a slew of other things that we need to address. Do not get me wrong. But the root issue, the core causality of this event, we definitely need to take a real look at. We don't need to bypass it. You're spending so much time and so much energy and so much resources just looking at what the event is. You're not actually taking anything from it. You need to learn. We need to learn. We need to find a way to learn from this instead of just sit there with our dicks in our hands going, well, I don't fucking know what's wrong, but let's blame this guy. Let's blame that guy. Where's my fucking target? Like, come on, dude. And I don't know. It's not just Trump. Trump, I'm fucking irritated at for the video game comments. But the rest of everyone that wants to do the same exact fucking thing, fucking point the goddamn finger. Whatever. As always, this is Mace Valor, signing the fuck off.